Welcome to my channel Limelight Leaks. Please share and subscribe, and hit the bell icon for latest updates.
Richard Rawlings built his success on a simple plan. Find cheap cars, fix them fast, sell them for money. This was how Fast and Loud worked and what Gas Monkey Garage was all about. Buy cheap, build quick, sell high. It wasn't just what he said. It was who Richard was. He was the best at making deals. He never got attached to cars. Always thinking about the next deal. Over the years, he bought and sold hundreds of cars. Some were famous, some nobody remembered. All of them were like game pieces in a big car business game. While fans loved his speed and confidence, some quietly asked, did any of these cars really matter to him? For a man who built his brand on never looking back, Richard always looked forward. One deal led to another. Even million-dollar cars were just prizes for a short time. He always said, you can't keep them all. And he meant it. There was no room for feelings in Gas Monkey Garage, only making money, getting famous, and being fast. That's why what happened next was so shocking. One day, a car came through the doors that changed everything Richard believed. It didn't look special at first. Beat up, dusty, covered by years of being forgotten. But something about it made him stop. He didn't make a joke. He didn't brush it off. He stood still. And for the first time in years, Richard didn't see a dollar sign. He saw something he couldn't explain. This wasn't just a build. This wasn't just a flip. This was a car that touched his heart. A car that would break his rule of never getting attached. And by the time it left the garage, it wouldn't just become one of Gas Monkey's most famous builds. It would become the one Richard Rawlings would be sorry he sold for the rest of his life. It rolled off the trailer like a ghost, covered in dust, old paint sticking to its sides, and the smell of old gas still hanging in the air. At first look, it seemed like just another barn find, a forgotten muscle car with more rust than power. But Richard Rawlings saw something different. This wasn't a parts car. This was something special. It was a 1970 Dodge Charger RT. But not just any kind. This one had a Ray factory option package, a matching numbers 426 Hemi, and papers linking it to a car dealer with a drag racing history. Only a few were ever built like it, and even fewer lived through the years. But this one, somehow it had been hidden away in a shed in Oklahoma for many years, safe from both weather and attention. As Richard walked around the car, there was a quiet moment in the shop. The usual laughs and talking stopped. This was one of those cars that didn't just sit there. It told a story. And Richard, usually quick to decide, didn't rush this one. It wasn't flashy. It didn't scream TV gold, but it had soul. And Richard knew it. The seller didn't want to let it go. He'd had offers before. Museums, collectors, even some celebrities had tried to buy the car, but something about Richard's reputation made him say yes. He believed Gas Monkey could bring it back to life the right way. It was an emotional sale, and Richard understood what that meant. For once, he wasn't just buying a car. He was taking care of a legacy. The crew at Gas Monkey Garage knew they were about to work on something special, but they didn't know just how deep it would go. This was a car that would turn their usual way of working upside down. Because unlike their usual 6-week jobs and auction-focus builds, this one was going to be different. As the team began taking the Charger apart, they found layer after layer of forgotten history. Old racing stickers behind the rear quarter windows. A broken speedometer, still set from its last run. Handwritten notes under the dash. Every bolt told a story, and those stories began pointing towards something bigger. Richard brought in a car history expert, and the rumors started flying. Some said the car had been part of a Chrysler test drag program. Others believed it had been custom built for a local racer who disappeared from racing after a bad crash. The VIN matched with raid dealer orders, ones that hadn't been seen in many years. Hidden in the glove box was an old photo of the car on a drag strip with a teenage driver and an old sponsor sign in the background. Richard had seen rare cars before, but this one felt alive. It had personality, sadness, and strength carved into every dent. It wasn't just a machine. It was a time machine. That's when Richard made a decision he rarely made. He told the crew, we're not flipping this one. We're doing it right. And they did. Factory correct everything. Rebuilt Hemi engine. Period correct drag tires. The original paint color was brought back. Plum crazy purple. Richard personally watched over the stance, the exhaust sound, even the finish on the shifter knob. He wasn't just building this car, he was saving it. Fans on social media got small looks at the progress, but the real story stayed inside the garage. For the first time in a long time, Richard wasn't acting for the cameras. He wasn't chasing quick money. He was chasing something else. Perfection. And maybe a connection to the kid inside him who once dreamed of cars like this, but could never touch them. The Charger's comeback wasn't fast, and it wasn't easy. This wasn't a typical gas monkey build made to impress at an auction. This was work done with love, and love takes time. Every detail was carefully done. Richard brought in experts, called in favors, and even turned down a fast TV deadline to get things right. The car had to sound right, drive right, and feel right. The project quickly became the most important thing in the shop, a monument to the kind of builds that made Richard fall in love with cars in the first place. The crew noticed the change. Richard wasn't rushing them. In fact, he was more patient, more hands-on. He was at the shop earlier than usual, caring about small things. Mirror placement, trim gaps, carburetor tuning. It was clear this car mattered. And in the chaos of the garage, something rare was happening. Everyone began treating the Charger like it was theirs, too. When the car was finally done, it wasn't just beautiful, it was amazing. It looked like it had never aged, like it had been frozen in time, waiting to be reborn. The first time Richard turned the key, the Hemi roared to life like a beast waking up. He smiled, but it wasn't his usual flashy grin. It was quiet, deep, personal. There were no flashy reveals, no overproduced promos, just a simple shot of the Charger rolling out into the sun. Richard posted it with a single caption. Some cars don't need hype. They speak for themselves. But the story wasn't over. Because just days later, the call came in. An offer, one so big it was impossible to ignore. The offer came from overseas. A wealthy private collector, anonymous, but with a known reputation for buying legendary builds, had heard about the Charger. He wanted it badly. The number, 7 figures. No arguing, no questions, just name the account. For Richard Rawlings, this was familiar territory. He'd built his empire on flipping. Buy low, build smart, sell high. That was the gas monkey formula. And this was the kind of deal most builders dream of. But this one hit differently. As he stared at the Charger parked in the sunlight, its purple paint shining, he hesitated. That was rare. He walked the length of the car slowly. He ran his hand over the quarter panel. For a moment, it wasn't about money. It was about the story. The car had been reborn at Gas Monkey. Every detail screamed legacy. And for once, Richard had the chance to keep something amazing in-house, to make it a centerpiece in the Gas Monkey story. But business is business. Richard had a team to pay, projects to fund, and a reputation for chasing the next big thing. After a long night and a quiet drive in the Charger under Texas skies, he made the call. The car was sold. When it rolled onto the covered trailer the next morning, the shop was unusually quiet. Even the crew seemed unsure. Richard kept his cool, smiling, joking, putting on the show. But fans would later say that in the footage posted online, you could see it in his eyes. Regret. Pain. Like something real had just left the building. He didn't talk about it much after that. Just another big flip. Another trophy on someone else's shelf. But behind the scenes, something had changed. Months passed and the Charger faded from the Gas Monkey feed. But in interviews and casual podcasts, Richard began dropping hints. When asked about the one car he wished he hadn't sold, he didn't hesitate. That Charger, he'd say, "We nailed it, and I let it go." It wasn't the value that haunted him. It was the build, the story, the feeling that they'd created something timeless, and he'd handed it off like it was just another deal. That's not something Richard Rawlings admits often. The fast-talking, sharp-dressed mogul is known for swagger, not sentiment. But this Charger pierced the armor. He described the sound of the Hemi, the way it handled, the vibe it brought to the garage. He even admitted that the offer came too fast, that maybe, just maybe, he didn't give himself enough time to enjoy it before signing it away. "I sold it before I had the chance to fall in love with it," he once told a friend off camera, "and now I think about it more than I should." That vulnerability was rare, and it struck a chord with fans. Social media lit up. He should have kept it. That car was Gas Monkey. Not everything is about the flip. For a man who made his name flipping rides, this was a wake-up call. A reminder that every so often a build comes along that deserves more than a profit margin. It deserves a place in your soul. When the Chargers build aired on Fast and Loud, it quickly became one of the most talked about episodes. But what stuck with fans wasn't just the craftsmanship. It was the vibe, the raw energy, the rare glimpse of Richard working not just as a host, but as a builder who truly cared. In online forums and Facebook groups, fans debated the sale. Comments flooded YouTube clips and Instagram posts. He should have kept it. That car was magic. This one had history. People weren't just admiring it. They felt connected to it. And when they realized it had been sold off, the disappointment was real. Some fans even started petitions asking Richard to buy it back. Others guessed where it had gone. Whispers of the car being spotted at an exclusive European collection swirled, but nothing was ever confirmed. It was like the Charger had vanished again. This time behind gates and velvet ropes. The Gas Monkey merchandise team tried to ride the wave, printing limited shirts and posters of the car, but they didn't sell out like usual. Maybe fans didn't want a souvenir of the one that got away. Maybe they wanted the real thing to still be part of the brand. More than a few fans wrote directly to Richard. Some begged him to buy it back. Others just said, "Thank you for giving the car a second life, even if it was brief." But the message was clear. That Charger wasn't just a car. It was a symbol of what Gas Monkey could be when it wasn't chasing deals. When it was chasing passion, and for the first time, the fans saw the regret before Richard ever admitted it. Rumors started swirling. At SEMA, inside conversations at auctions and across fan forums, people were asking the same question. Did Richard Rawlings try to get the Charger back? Insiders say yes. Not long after the dust settled and the Charger was delivered overseas, Richard made inquiries. Quietly, he reached out to the buyer's broker, poked around through his network. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was full-blown seller's remorse. Either way, the answer came back hard. The car wasn't for sale. And even if it was, the price had more than tripled. Worse, the new owner had changed it. The Charger was no longer as it left Gas Monkey. It had been modified. New wheels, slight adjustments to the interior, even a different rear spoiler. Nothing extreme, but enough. The soul of the build, as Richard remembered it, had shifted. Sources close to the garage say Richard was gutted. He told his crew that if he had just waited even a few more weeks, maybe he would have kept it. Maybe it would have ended up in his personal warehouse next to the Ferrari, the Hellcat, the Deuce Coupe. But the moment was gone. And unlike the hundreds of cars that had come and gone through Gas Monkey, this one didn't fade with time. It stuck. Like a song you can't forget. A decision that echoes louder the further. For a man who built a brand on flipping fast and moving on, this Charger revealed something unexpected about Richard Rawlings. Even the best deal makers feel loss. Privately, Richard admitted to close friends that this build made him rethink his approach. That maybe not every car was just inventory. Some were milestones, artifacts, time capsules that deserved a home, not just a price tag. It sparked a quiet shift inside Gas Monkey garage. Suddenly, a few more cars stuck around. Some were parked in the back of the shop. Others ended up in Richard's personal collection. He even talked openly about starting a legacy wing, curating the top 5 Gas Monkey builds of all time. Builds they wouldn't flip. Builds that would stay. The Charger was the one that taught him that lesson. The one that slipped through his fingers and left a scar. And fans noticed. They could see it in how he talked about future builds. A little more reverence, a little less rush. It wasn't about going soft. It was about growing up in the business, about realizing that some builds carry a piece of you with them. And when you sell them, that piece is gone, too. In the end, Richard Rawlings did what he always does. He kept moving. New episodes, new deals, new cars rolling through the garage. But that Charger, it never quite left. In interviews, he still mentions it. The color, the sound, the feel. That was a Gas Monkey built through and through, he says. And we'll let it go. It's become part of his mythology now. The one car he regrets. The reminder that even empires built on horsepower and hustle are still human at the core. That even Richard Rawlings, king of the flip, lord of the deal, has a ghost in his rear view mirror. And maybe that's why fans love him all the more. Because behind the sunglasses, the fast talk, and the seven-figure flips, there's a car guy who just once felt what we all feel. That we let something special slip away. The Charger is out there somewhere, tucked away in a climate-controlled vault. Still gorgeous, still mean, but no longer his. And while Richard will build dozens more, sell hundreds more, and keep making headlines, he'll always have that one story. The one that got away, the one that taught him something money never could. Sometimes the best cars just aren't meant to be sold.